Since day one, she's already had everything she needs within herself. It's the world that convinced her she did not. By Rupi Kaur. Hi and welcome to Get Rooted, a podcast created from the desire to provide a sacred space for your deepest healing, and I'm your host, Bonnie Michelle. For a week now, I have been planning and prepping this recording to launch, and as I did so, the lyrics to this song by Hillsong wouldn't leave me alone. And as I moved through the various communities, groups, friendships during my travel, I kept coming back to this song. Jesus, lover of my soul, I will never let you go. You've brought me from the miry clay and set my feet upon the rock, and now I know. Jesus, I need you. Jesus, I love you. Jesus, lover of my soul, I will never let you go. These lyrics, whether you are a Christian or you substitute Jesus with the divine, the goddess, the source, are so powerful to me. I think they're even more powerful when we substitute Jesus with our own name. The reminder that we are our greatest asset in setting the standard for love. So many of us grow up imitating the version of love that we first witnessed by our parents. The way that they showed us love, the way that they held us when we were hurt, the way that they greeted us when we made an error or failed at something, the way that they gave us attention or didn't, the way that they showed up or didn't in our lives. This set the stage for how we would move through our adolescence into adulthood, understanding love. It's our first experience of expressing and receiving love in this world and this lifetime. And so we begin that journey from birth, from day one, of confining and fitting and exploring the avenues of what is love, testing the boundaries of where we can go, what's too far, what's right. If we're loved through our actions and our doing, if we're loved for our behavior and our characteristics, if we're loved for our silence and our stillness. So many of us in this journey seek for love outside of ourselves because we've learned that in order to have love, we need to have approval. And in order to have approval, we must behave, act, do, be a certain way. I'm here to tell you to throw all of that out the window. Lover of my soul is deeper than some surface level identification. Lover of my soul meets me at a depth that nobody has ever met before. Lover of my soul recognizes the power of loving beyond what the eye can see, what the hand can touch, what the nose can smell and the ear can hear. Loving soul deep isn't anything fully tangible, at least to the physical form. It's something that we must unlearn and relearn and unlearn again and relearn. If I was to tell you the first time that I ever felt soulfully loved, it would be the nights that I spent curled up in my bed, imagining and having conversation with the divine. And at that time, in my Christian rearing and understanding, and in the life of a little girl who was a daddy's girl, who had an older brother who she adored and was her best friend, and as someone who had a lot of really great male figures in her life. I understood the divine to be my heavenly Father, to be that parent, father, nurturing figure. And so at night, terrified of the dark and the energies that felt uncomfortable and scary, terrified of the life-size Elmer Fudd and the porcelain doll with glass eyes my grandma so lovingly thought to put in my room, I would have conversations with the divine, imagining myself curled up in his lap, being held, being comforted like a little child. I was only about 5 or 6 when I began the practice of being asked to be held in the Father's wings, that he would hold me just long enough that I might actually rest. And then not to leave me as soon as I fell asleep, but to continue to hold me and to guide me and to lovingly watch over me like my strong protector. And I felt in those moments so fully held, so fully loved. Imagining the radiant white light and the feathers that enclosed around me like the shell of an egg, but much softer, kinder, and stronger. I felt warmth. I felt safety and security in a way that I didn't feel it anywhere else. I prayed this prayer night after night for as long as I can remember. And it wasn't until my early 20s, I was actually about 21, 22, when I heard a song on the radio that had the lyrics about the refuge of the Father's wings. And that's when I discovered Psalms 91:4, being wrapped in the Father's wings, and that in his refuge I would not be harmed. Of course, paraphrasing the verse, but you get the gist. That was my first real remembrance in this lifetime of being so fully loved, of being held in my absolute darkness, in my sheer terror, and in my childlike desire for love. And I know that not all of us have this remembrance or this experience so fully to know that this is what it is to be so fully loved. As I moved on into my later elementary years, I watched my peers date, finding their crushes and the puppy love and trying to have boyfriends and girlfriends in 4th and 5th grade. And I remember the pressure put on me to date my best friend, who was a guy, who I talked to for hours on end, locked in the half bath of our home. And the pressure there was that because we related and because we connected on a much deeper level, that everyone around us could see that we were meant to be and we were supposed to date and we were supposed to be together, because that's what society tells us love is. And time again, I turned it down. I knew somehow in my young heart that that wasn't love, that that wasn't meant for me. The love that I longed for, the love that I thirsted for and craved and knew in the depths of my heart exists for me, wasn't earthly. And I began to take on this saying, if to no one else but myself, single by man, taken by God. Single by man, taken by God. I remember watching my cousins go through a ceremony of sorts and receiving their purity rings and being dated by their parents and discussing this entrance into maturity, the changing of hormones, the desire for another, and the things that come with that, and the commitment to honor God, to honor self, even in the desire for another. And I carried that line, if for no one else but myself, single by man, taken by God. I remember I would watch others date, and when I turned 15, I was invited to a blind date for a really sweet homeschooled farm boy. And of course, how could you turn down someone who could be Eminem's lookalike? Even loved his music. And so I dated for the first time. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is love. This is what it's supposed to be. This is how couples happen and how you find the high school sweetheart. But even in that, I felt lonely. And he ended up being the first of many men that I had dated. And I can't say many because it's not like I've dated a trillion men, but I've dated enough. And he was the first of those men to find someone else, to break up with me without an explanation, only to find him later with someone else. And by later, I mean less than a week later, on a date, ignoring me, and definitely having had been with her, not for the first time. And so I lived this pattern, single by man, taken by God, even through my dating, recognizing that the partners that I had were only there to teach me about love, and that I would know when it was ending. I would know when I'd learned my lesson. I watched friends go in and out of relationships all through my adolescence into my high school and college years, constantly coming to me for advice and consolement and understanding. And of course, because personal development is my favorite genre, of course, I was someone to go to. I was the one to bring them back into alignment, to remind them of who they are, to remind them that it's okay to be united and yet still free, united and yet still independent. And that dating someone didn't mean bondage, dating someone didn't mean neglecting yourself for them. Constantly reminding those around me of the beauty that they hold and that need to honor their desires. If I could tell you the number of people I counseled, well, it'd take a while to write up the list because it's pretty long. Because a lot of people struggle with understanding love, with not wanting what their parents had, or maybe wanting what their parents had and not knowing how to give that to themselves. All the while looking for it outside of themselves. Trying to find that one partner who's going to fully illuminate their heart, love them, open them wide, and yet still be soft and gentle, while at the same time being their fierce warrior and advocate for their heart. I will tell you that I still don't know everything about love. I can't say that every time I've given advice it's been spot on and perfect. That there isn't my own trials and tribulations and my own wrongdoings in relationships. I definitely have had those. But what I can say about love is that the love that we are seeking outside of ourselves is never really outside of us. The divine source, God, the goddess, lives within us. We are that divine spark. The love that we so desperately, soulfully seek in this lifetime and experience isn't any further than our own heart. It's why in the Bible it says, guard your heart above all else. My daughter and I were actually listening to a song earlier that talked about why I don't date. And I think that was actually maybe even the title of the song. And she said, yeah, Mom, I can't give my heart to somebody else. This is why I don't want to grow up and date. And I said, of course that's why you don't want to grow up and date. Because we were never meant to give our heart away. Think about all the organs and things that we can donate of our body to someone else and still thrive and live. But our heart, we have to be dead to donate our heart. We have to not want to live anymore to give our heart away. And I'm not saying in the sense of loving someone else, do not give. But your heart is yours. It's yours to guard, to protect, to nurture, to grow, to evolve. It is your responsibility. I say this lovingly. Not because you can't love another or love them fully or even love them soulfully. But we are humans having a human experience. And if I myself know and am being radically honest with myself that I can cause harm, that I can make imperfect steps, and I can, with best of intentions, bring hurt to someone else, then I must also acknowledge that they can do the same. That someone else could also hurt me. That someone else could also, best of intentions, bring heartache to me. And in knowing that, I need to be responsible. I need to understand that my heart is my heart. Not that I cannot share its love and its light with others, but that it is my responsibility to guard and protect and nurture my own heart. It's easy for me to say, or for a lot of people to say, it starts with self-love. Because your heart is your responsibility, that means that you set the standard for how you're loved. And if you set the standard for how you're loved, then it means that it starts with self-love. And when I say that it's easy for me or for others to say, hey, self-love, go love yourself, I mean it sounds simple. The words are easy. The actions are not. The actions run much deeper than the words. The actions are the follow-through to the belief that you're actually worthy of being loved. When you set the standard for how you're loved, that means you're taking responsibility for how you love. And you show others the standard by loving yourself in the same way that you want to be loved. This means showing up for yourself when you say you're going to do things. Committing to yourself like you want to be committed to. This means also taking the blame for the choices that you've made when you know that you were the one who co-created those or even solely created those. This means recognizing that everyone outside of you is but a mirror to your own soul. And that desire that you are longing for in someone else, for them to show you, to display to you, is also something that you can show and give and provide for yourself. The reason that there is such controversy over dating and being partnered up is because societally we're taught that love is outside of ourselves. And that to date ourselves is almost a rebellion. And yet, it can be so empowering and liberating, because when we realize that we love ourselves, we realize that we're not waiting on anybody else. We realize our worth, our value. We realize that everything we went out into the world to seek was already here within us. We realize that the arguments we're having and the frustrations we have with others, yes, conversations and conflicts happen, and yes, discussions and communication need to happen. But if we're being really truthful with ourselves, the things that we judge others for, whether it's them not showing up on time for us, whether it's them not being available enough to us, whether it's them not pursuing us, desiring us, lusting for us. All of those things, if we are seeing that in our partners and those who we cultivate in our life, are things that on some level, and sometimes you really have to dig for it, are things that we are not providing for ourselves. We have somehow set the standard on some level in our life that those things are acceptable. Because if they weren't acceptable to us, it wouldn't be happening in those who we're attracting into our life. And it certainly wouldn't be repeating the cycle. So if you're wondering, okay, so what actions then do I do? So you say, love myself. What does that even mean? I had someone once tell me, I need more than affirmations and journaling. I get it. It's more than a quick little feel good. It's repetitive, consistent action. If you were to take a moment and write a list of all the things that you wish your ideal partner would do for you, how many of those things have you done for yourself lately? When's the last time you took yourself on a moonlit stroll? When's the last time you provided yourself a candlelight dinner with a nice, prepared, and displayed meal? When is the last time that you cried because you felt like being cried and you held yourself? When is the last time that you did something for you because it felt good to do it, whether anyone else joined you or not? And don't just start there. If we're truly being responsible for our hearts and the love that we give ourselves, if we're truly setting the standard, then we're also taking ownership of the not so pretty parts. If we want our partner to take ownership for where they've done wrong or where they hurt us or where their human experience is a little too human-y and real and maybe painful for us, then we also need to get real about owning how we have created that situation. Loving yourself isn't about just absorbing and romancing the good. It's about sitting with your own darkness, sitting with your own shadows and facing them. And not just sitting and facing them, but loving them more fully. It's about those moments when we hold our own heart because we are responsible for it and no one else alone. Holding your heart looks like this. I had a scenario a few months ago, or about a half a year ago, where I was triggered by something someone else said. And in that triggering, I could tell that there was something I wanted from that someone, and I was livid. I was mad. And if you've ever met a stubborn Filipino-German mix, well, there you have it. I've got streaks of red hair, and were they lit on fire with my temper. I was in full-on rage and reaction mode. But if I've learned anything, I've learned to know when to bite my tongue in my anger. Maybe not always, and I'm not always perfect at it, but I do know that when I'm being triggered and I feel that rage, that there is a time to bite my tongue. And when I looked at that person and I wanted so much to lash out, to tell them how they weren't showing up for me and how they weren't including me, I bit my tongue. Not literally, though. And I walked out of the room because I knew that underneath all of that anger was a sad heart. Looking at the level of consciousness, beneath anger is always sadness and grief and shame. So I took a moment and I went and sat with myself. I gave myself a nice, long, hot Epsom salt bath because I could. I took in a book just in case I wanted to read it, and I didn't because I was stewing. I was in my little pot and I was brewing. And so I sat with myself and I wrestled with myself and I kept asking myself, what is it that you want? What is it that this person is not giving you? And why do you need it from them? If you want so desperately to have this attention, to have this quality time, to have this invitation in, why do you need it? How does it serve you? And more importantly, what are you not facing about yourself that you need? And how can I begin to own that? How can I begin to give myself the very thing that I had been craving from this other person? You know what I realized? Well, I got out of the tub and I went to my room and I, of course, angry scribbled in my journal. And I realized that the thing that I was doing is I was waiting around for someone else to give me permission to have fun, to say that I was invited, that I was worth being around. But the whole time that I was sitting there waiting, I was beating myself up over the things that I wasn't doing. I wasn't following through on anything because I wanted to keep my schedule open, that this person might maybe invite me into the conversation, into the activity, into the event, into the group. And I was wasting my own time not doing things that light me up and make me excited because I wanted this person to do it for me. I didn't want to be responsible for my own heart. And as I was sitting there scribbling and journaling, of course, my friend came in noticing that obviously something was off, as a good friend they are, and said, "Hey, did I make you mad?" And I laughed. And I was like, "Nope," in my sarcastic, still a little fiery tone of voice. Because I knew that while they might have triggered my anger, that it was not them who made me mad. It was me who had made myself sad for devaluing my own worth and the value of my own time. That's what I mean when I say love yourself. Soulfully, deeply being the lover of your own soul. Being the one to sit with yourself in the darkness and the hurt and the pain and the grief and owning it. Lover of my soul, I will never let you go. That's the lyrics that I heard this week. As I talked with friends who are wonderful and happy in their relationships and also having struggle, questions, and doubt. When I watched loved ones trying to tuck away and hide the hurt of their heart, to be the lover of my soul, to love me soulfully and so deeply that I can feel it soul level. And I will never let it go. I am the guardian, the warrior, the advocate of my own heart. Your actions towards yourself, the way that you look at yourself when you pass that mirror, the way that you carry on that internal dialogue, are all ways in which you show yourself love. They're all ways in which you show up for yourself. And I encourage you that if you are feeling like you're not enough, like you're not worthy, that you're unlovable, to ask yourself why. Why do you feel that way? And whatever thing you come up with, ask yourself why again. Why is that? Why did you get here? And when you can, ask yourself, how did I create this? How did I contribute to this situation? How have I allowed myself to accept this level of love? Get curious, not to judge yourself, because you're human and we're all human. And love is tough. But let me tell you, love is tougher than you, and it's tougher than any trial, any tribulation that you have been in. And it will see you through. Choose love. Choose you and choose love. And choose loving you. Know that there is no greater lover of soul than the divine universe herself. She lives in you. The heavenly God lives in you. It is everlasting. It is unbound. It is liberating and freeing from your shame, from your guilt, from your sadness, from your heartache, from your past. It is freeing. When you can own the ways that you have not been responsible for your heart, when you can own the ways that you have been responsible for your heart, when you can own your own story, then you can begin to set the standard bit by bit of how you're loved and how the world sends you love. You can begin to open up and be vulnerable and authentic and raw and be unshakable in that vulnerability. So take a moment, put your hands on your heart. Feel it. Feel your heart beat and the strength of its pound and the warmth of its beat. Hear the music to its own rhythm. Find breath. And know that you hold the key, that you are the lover of your soul, and that you will never, ever let it go. Lover of my soul, I will never let you go. You've been listening to Get Rooted, a podcast created from the desire to provide a sacred space for your deepest healing. Be sure to follow my podcast, share it with a friend, and reach out to connect for accountability, mentorship, and support. Namaste.